And welcome to this week's Intellicide.
Yeah.
Where intelligence has been murdered.
Yes.
We're going to figure out who done it.
Yes.
Actually, we all know who done it.
GameStop stock surge edition.
Yeah, GameStop. Yeah. You know, what's funny is that we started off, talking about what we're going to, talk about this week. And then all week I've been into this whole, about Wall Street bets, the Reddit forum, and what they were doing. I mean, it's interesting. I was fascinated by the whole thing, honestly, because it's interesting because it kind of shows like a herd mentality and all that, and it shows like it's interesting. I don't know. So for people who don't know, what happened was Reddit is an internet message board. On Reddit, there was a group called Wall Street Bets. And on this group, so the thing is that Reddit is probably the biggest internet message board in America. Anyway, yes. So on this board, they started organizing around, they discovered that GameStop had been shorted, which is where the hedge funds were betting that the stock was going to go down.
Right.
And they had done it to a point where they had shorted it 140%. So it was shorted 140%, like more than what it was worth.
Right.
So it was way over shorted. And there's not that many shares of GameStop in circulation. There's only like 65 million shares, which is compared to like Amazon has like 65 billion.
Right.
So there's what happened was they organized around, they saw that this stock was being shorted, and they all got together to basically say, screw the hedge funds, by buying into GameStop. And enough people bought into it, and there was enough supply. The supply of shares was small enough that they were able to influence that by buying it, and they drove the price up and made all of those hedge funds lose billions.
Well, right, because the reason why they lose billions is because they borrowed the money to purchase the stocks when they shorted. And so when the price goes up, they have to either borrow more money or buy more shares to limit their losses. Because if they don't buy more shares, then they will actually be out of even more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the reason. And I just pasted a link to explain how to use short a stock. So if we post that during the episode, people will maybe get a little bit of more understanding on how that process works.
So it's interesting is that there's a lot of activity, of course, since this became such big news, that Reddit group blew up. I mean, when all this started, one of the things that made it so effective was that there was like 2.5 million people on that group, on that one Reddit group.
Right.
So when they did buy into it, they had apparently 2.5 million people buy in to a share that only had 65 million shares in circulation. So they were able to really affect the stock price.
Right. So
what's interesting is that ever since then, all of these people and bots have flooded that board, and there's all this talk about what's going to be the next stock, right? It's BlackBerry, it's Nokia, Naked Foods, all these different stocks. And the thing that I will tell you is this, all of them have more shares in circulation than GameStop did. And none of them are shorted anywhere near as much as GameStop was. So by driving the price up, you won't be affecting the hedge funds as much because they're not as heavily into that.
Right. Yeah. So, the thing that I think really got to a lot of people is the app. And a lot of people don't like to call it a trading app, even though you can trade stocks on it. I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But Robinhood stopped the individual investors who were using that app to purchase these shares. They stopped them, but they didn't stop these big, the big investment firms. The hedge funds were still able to.
What was really interesting is they stopped people from buying, but not selling.
Right. Right.
So I mean, it was really manipulation, right? Like they were really like, you can only do this one kind of transaction on this stock. You can only sell. Right. So of course the price is going to go down because they're only allowing, but I mean, Robinhood's not the only app out there. It just
but
biggest because it is.
And they weren't the only one to stop. It was I want to say it was Ameritrade and Fidelity.
Yeah.
No, not Fidelity. I take that back. Schwab.
Yeah.
Schwab.
There was a few apps actually. So like there's a bunch of other apps that compete with Robinhood, like Webull and stuff like that. And they had actually all stopped it too.
So but this situation showed the power of people when you group together to do something like that. And
it does.
These hedge funds and money managers, they all want more people to invest their money into the stock market. It was really evident back when George Bush, was president, and he wanted to change Social Security into a stock, held type system.
Right.
That would have, I mean, these managers would have went bonkers over that amount of money. I mean, you're talking about trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, and it just seems funny to me that when individual investors who aren't paying someone a commission, et cetera, get into it, now they have a problem with that. That's not right.
It's classism and everything, because it's at the same time you have these people who they're all highly educated in the stock market, right? They've learned this system inside and out and how to manipulate it and everything. So to them, they see a mob coming in, right? And they see a bunch of people who don't really know what they're doing. They're kind of being led around by the nose a little bit. And they are, in a way. It's true. That's what I find so fascinating about it, is that, they were able to get 2.5 million people to follow along and do this thing and invest their own money in doing this thing. And all the people who, I'll admit, like I jumped on and off and I made like a short-term, profit on the whole thing. Cause you could see it made so much press, you see the way it's go. But it is, it's a very risky thing, that's not a,
I've had stocks for years now. And yes, you can make a lot of money. You can also lose a lot of money. I've lost money on several different types of stocks.
Yeah. Well, and the whole point of what they were trying to do was to hold the stocks, to force the hedge funds to have to lose, because there was going to be a certain time limit by which the stock had to stay above, a certain level, and they would lose all this money.
Right.
So that was one of the things they were telling everybody they had to hold through last week, It really is kind of a targeted thing, right? A lot of those people were saying, they were willing to put their money in and lose it. And that's everybody who got in early made a ton. Everybody who got in late didn't make anything, made maybe a little bit. But it's going to be interesting to see if it can happen again, right? Because in a way, it happened because the hedge funds have been so unregulated for so long that they were able to do that. I mean, they were driving GameStop into the ground. I mean, GameStop, we already know is not doing well, right? Their whole business model is based on physical media for video games, which is kind of going away, right? Like,
well, there's still a market for it. I mean, let's not be overlook the fact that they did close thousands of stores nationwide. There used to be, where I live here in Michigan, there used to be 3 within literally a half a mile of each other. That's way too many stores. They had too many. They closed some stores, but my son, he still plays physical media. Some games they just don't release digitally like that. I think the video game market itself has to go through some growing pains. The amount of space that you get on these game systems right now isn't, 1 terabyte seems like a lot of space, but start installing games that it could be up to 50 gigabytes for one game.
Some of these games 250 gigabytes.
Well, it depends on the console. It depends.
Yeah.
But I would say on average, some of them are less. Some might be 4 or 5. But I've had some games where I've installed them and it was like 50 gigs.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
funny
space.
too, because it's funny. I was going through some boxes recently and I found like a bunch of old CDs and stuff of video games. It's funny because you look at it. I remember like when Neverwinter came out, and it was a big deal because it was on multiple CDs,
right?
Because it was like each CD was a 1.2 gig, 1.4 gig.
Yep.
And it was like, oh my god, it's such a huge game. It might be like 4 or 5 gig, in size. Nowadays, I download games that big,
Yeah. Well, I mean, bless me. You talked about more like PC. Bless me, gaming over console. Yes, that's a different beast. You can have a lot more storage on a PC over
console. Well,
right now consoles are capped out, I think, at 1 gig or 1 terabyte for the internal storage. You can add USB hard drives, but again, I like you still have a limited amount of space.
Right.
So that's why
it's kind of a thing too with like how you play your games nowadays. What kind of games you play.
Right.
I have gone through, like, I'm honestly mostly a PC gamer. I've gone through phases of consoles. But I don't know, lately, honestly, I've been doing more VR gaming.
Yeah, I saw that you about the Oculus.
I did. Yeah, I got an Oculus for Christmas.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
It is pretty cool, actually. It's fun. It was they're hard to get a hold of, so it was like one of those things where it was wow.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a good workout, honestly. That's one of those things. It's been doing Beat Saber and what's the other one? Synth Riders, stuff like that. It's all very similar.
Okay.
But it's actually some of the games are pretty cool.
Right.
They actually have a VR version of Angry Birds. That's pretty fun. There's it's funny, they have a VR version of Minecraft. And both my kids love Minecraft. So I hooked it up for them and I let them both use it, and they both agreed that Minecraft was not designed for VR.
Now, do you have the wired one or do you have the wireless?
So I have the wireless one, the Quest 2, but you can hook it up to the computer with a USB-C cord.
Okay.
So like the stuff to play like Minecraft and stuff like that, you need to hook it up to so it's funny. So the Quest has its own like store, right? Like you can download stuff in the Quest store, or you can hook it up via cable to a PC, and then you can use the Oculus Rift store.
Okay.
Which is it's the same games. A lot of it's the same stuff, but they actually have different daily deals on each store. Like the Quest will have a daily deal, and then but if you buy it on the Rift store, then it's in your inventory on the Quest.
Wow.
So yeah, it's weird. There are and there's a lot of weird games. There's a lot of Steam games too that honestly, one of the coolest games to do with it is Star Wars Squadrons. Because I played that, first. I like the flight games. First I played it on the Xbox.
Right.
Then I played it on the PC with a flight stick. Then when you play it in VR, the difference, it's a totally different game, because then you're actually in the cockpit and you look around and you see yourself in the cockpit.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah, so that's cool. The game industry is going through some changes. Like you said, Microsoft, they're pushing their streaming game service. Physical media probably will eventually be gone, so that will affect GameStop. But I don't see that disappearing entirely in the next 5 years.
Best Buy kind of rescued themselves in an interesting way. They refocused their store on more of a consumer. So they did price matching, and then they did this whole thing where their store became more open and inviting, and their people were more It was more a place where you could go in and test stuff and check it out before you buy it, and have questions answered, talk to someone about it if you wanted, and then the interesting thing was, so it used to be like you go into the store, look at it, and then go buy it online, right? Get it cheaper. But once they started price matching, it was like, well, anywhere I can find it online, I just show it to them and they'll match that price. So I'll just get it right there.
Right.
And GameStop, honestly, I mean, the only times I've been in GameStop recently was like to ask a question about something, like I had a question about a game or something that was coming out and I wanted to know something about it. I'm like, oh, I'll stop at GameStop. Right. Because they always knew. So, I mean, it's kind of like if maybe they could rescue themselves by maybe leaning in on the service or something,
Well, right. I don't think that GameStop, it's one of those things where you're right. You're in an industry that is changing. There may not be a place for you, but I still don't see them being wiped away entirely in the next 5 years. I don't see us moving entirely digital that fast. I don't either.
Although, I mean, it is one of those things where less people are doing it, so the share of the market's going to be decreasing for them. So it's not a growth industry for them anymore, right? Like as far as profits. I thought it was interesting when they purchased ThinkGeek. I actually found myself going into GameStop more often to look at the ThinkGeek merchandise rather than the video games.
So this is where and this is just me. If GameStop had, maybe a way where you could order the games used or whatever, and they sold on eBay or maybe even they go into the game rental service like GameFly. They could do something like that where they could still exist. The problem is right. I think they, are just so locked in with what they are, physical locations, and they're not, looking, hey, maybe we need to transition. They could have, hey, we got to start, increasing our store, electrical storefront. Maybe you could have did something where you could order it online, and then you could check the physical location of stores, close to those people to get them the games faster. I mean, things like that would have kept people, actually shopping.
You could work out deals with the game, makers, maybe to get because I mean, that's a lot of the games are going to like codes, even they'll give you a code to download a game. Right. So maybe they get and some of them are already doing it where you pre-order a game and you get these extra items or something, but if you order it through GameStop, then you get these, extra stuff. But I mean, something like that. But you're right, though. I mean, the industry's changing. They need to adapt.
Yep.
That's really the end of it. But I mean, and it is one of those things where, there is a market for what they do. It's like Toys R Us, right? Toys R Us didn't need to be just, wiped out. There was still actually a market. It was actually bad management. It was that kind of thing where they ended up getting driven out of business.
Right. Well, I mean, again, these CEOs make a lot of money. They're the ones that's supposed to be coming up with this kind of leadership to say, hey, we need to move, we need to transition.
But the problem, how are we going to get there? Their incentive is no longer to make the company work. Their incentive is now to make the shareholders the most money. And a lot of times what they're finding is that in order to maximize short-term profit for the shareholders, just scrapping the whole thing and selling it off and taking the short-term profit is all they want to do, rather than, like you said, reform it and build something that long-term would be big.
Well,
and that's the kind of vision that you get somebody and that's why somebody like Steve Jobs is kind of rare, right? Because he had that kind of long-term vision. That most business leaders of these days really can't see it past the next fiscal quarter. It's really kind of sad. You ask somebody, what's your 5-year plan? And they'll look at you like a deer in headlights.
Right. Yes, sir.
So on to more weighty and important matters.
Yep.
WandaVision.
Listen, I'm a huge comic book fan.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew this or not, but actually, the Vision is my favorite superhero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am someone of very particular interest.
Do you have a particular version of the Vision that's your favorite?
Actually, I like the West Coast Avengers version of the Vision.
Okay.
You know, and so I haven't
Is that
really.
where they kind of started to make him a little more comic?
No, actually, no. If you read when he first joined the West Coast Avengers, because you know, I believe the Vision is one of the most powerful Avengers,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had this discussion before. I think the lack of creativity on the writer's parts is what has made him a very like one of the only things that they could do to harm the Vision was to disassemble him, break him, and things like that.
Yeah.
And if you've read the Avengers comics for any length of time, you see that this has happened repeatedly throughout the Avengers.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I found funny. This storyline, and it started in Avengers. What was the not Endgame?
Well,
What was the
Infinity
one?
War is where
Right. What was the one before Endgame?
Died, but Wanda was in Endgame.
Right, but what was the one before Endgame? The
Infinity
name?
War.
Infinity War. So right, it started there, but at the end of the Infinity War, there was a 5-year lapse. So now Shuri had vanished, so I get it. But now that she's back, you would think that they would say, "Hey, we have this Avenger." You know, yes, the Mind Stone had been ripped out of him, but Shuri should be able to, you know, hey, we can repair him. I mean, he should be repairable. And
it's funny because in the comic books, Ant-Man made him. It was Ant-Man.
Well, Hank Pym, Hank Pym.
Him in the comic books, right? Like he made Ultron and he made the Vision.
Yeah.
And in the comic books, Ant-Man and Tony Stark are constantly repairing him. It's like you said, like in the comic books, he's constantly being destroyed, and stuff like that. And then having, you know, like literally off screen, they'll have like, oh, Tony's over there repairing him. He'll be back in a minute. And then he just comes back.
Right.
Oh, he's all fixed.
Yep.
Tony put him back together.
Right. So that's where I didn't like with Tony Stark, and Tony Stark hadn't vanished. You would think that maybe Tony Stark would have said, hey, you know, let me, you know, I got all the time in the world now. Well, you know,
yeah. What happened to the Vision's body after?
Right. Like so, you know,
they were in Wakanda when it happened.
Dude, so listen, you know, to me, it's lazy writing. You know, you don't even want to address that. Now I know that they had a end game in purpose, no pun intended, that you know, right, they wanted to lead into WandaVision. Now, if they wanted to, because the speculation with WandaVision is that this will uncover the multiverse in the Marvel universe. And that, you know, this will be an introduction of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men.
Mutants, I could see that.
Right.
Well, so okay. Spoiler alert. I'm gonna put the I'm gonna of course label this whole thing with spoiler alert because spoiler alert.
Yes.
So you in this particular episode, like they started off the first few episodes are all done as television shows, basically, like sitcoms through the decades. They start 50s, 60s, 70s. And then this episode, where it all kind of comes to a head.
Well, right, because more action took place outside of the episodic format of a old classical TV, you know.
Series. Right. Well, and it's interesting because you get, you know, you are sitting there in the first 3 episodes going, what is going on? And then the 4th episode, you see all these other characters in the Marvel Universe looking at the same thing going, what the hell is going on?
Right.
No, but it's interesting because it's I mean, it's basically the same kind of thing as House of M, right? Where she just changes reality, right? Like she's basically like a human reality stone, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And she's basically doing the same thing, where she's rewriting local reality, though just around the town. But it includes it. I mean, in the comic books, it led to things that changed the whole universe, right? Like she eliminated mutants. So, I mean, the idea is that she could bring mutants into existence through this show. Like this could be the birth of somebody else who pointed out, I thought it was interesting, the idea that what X-Men, I don't know if you've ever read the X-Men or anything, but you're familiar with Mojo?
Yeah, the Mojo.
So he's an X-Men villain who's constantly putting on a TV show, and he puts everything in, he's constantly putting people into TV shows.
Yep. So
it would fit the theme of having Mojo as the villain.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really where they're going. It really
they said that the speculation, which I think is correct, is that Mephisto is actually, and that's another spoiler, is the villain behind this, because
really? I hadn't heard that one.
Well, when Wanda created her kids in the West Coast Avengers comic, she had, and I don't think it was attributed to Mojo or Mephisto originally. I can't remember the character's name, but she had taken a part of a demonic character's soul, basically, to create her children.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, all of this is she did it like, subconsciously. She didn't do it, like, hey, I'm gonna go out and try to just rip part of this, demon soul away to create these kids. But she created these kids in this way to cope with the fact that she couldn't have kids with Vision.
Right.
And so that's why, and eventually the villain got, named as someone who was a piece of Mephisto.
Okay. So did her kids grow up?
No. So what ended up happening, Agatha Harkness, she had come and basically revealed the fact that, hey, these aren't natural children. They're part of this demonic being and everything, and then they were able to basically give back the pieces of the demon.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly how Marvel came back, with the advent of the Young Avengers. They came back and said somehow that these kids actually did, still exist, though Wanda had, forgotten them.
Right.
So that's a very popular storyline from the comics, and
it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. So the thing I thought was pretty cool actually was the number of just Easter eggs they had in this episode. I thought it was great. The fact that it's the little girl from Captain Marvel,
right,
shows up. In my opinion, Jimmy Woo was like the greatest. That was
he had a great part. And you know what's funny? I like the fact that the opening of the show, the episode, showed the people coming back and the chaos.
Yes, actually, I thought that was great when they showed everyone actually starting to come back.
I mean, because they're like, hey, this coming out of thin air, and I mean, they're like, hey, what's going on?
And I thought that was great because she literally just like wakes up.
Yeah.
And she's like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah.
And
where's my mother?
I was just asleep. I must have just passed out. It was only a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
And look at her go like, she never actually tells her.
Right. But, but see, I didn't really like that fact because in the movie, they seem to have realized that they had been gone for 5 years. They did realize that. Some of them did. I like the chaotic opening or whatever to show like, hey, how half the population of the earth disappeared, now they are finally back, and that's I thought that was fantastic.
So it's funny too that I thought it was a funny thing that they had Jimmy Woo in the Ant-Man cartoon, the Ant-Man movie, because Jimmy Woo, if you're not familiar, is actually like a character in Marvel Universe. He was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He does Agent of Atlas. He was actually on, like, they had Jimmy Woo in when Marvel was doing Godzilla comics, Jimmy Woo was on the Godzilla squad. But he's been in a bunch of stuff, so it's cool that they're including him in the Marvel universe.
Right? Yeah, that is cool.
But I thought that was a very cool opening. So actually, I wanted to let's see here. We're gonna show my screen here real quick.
Okay.
And share the sound so we can watch this video.
Close-up magic. I learned that. How'd you do it, Scott? Do what? The card trick.
And from the show. And the funny part was, I didn't really catch this at first. My wife.
Jamesy Woo, FBI.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. This the greatest.
So I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was something that showed the continuity of the Marvel universe, and something that the DC films just haven't been able to capture. That emotional.
Oh, and then and then the third thing, of course, is Kat Dennings' character came back.
Yep.
Which I really like the fact that they gave her a redemption arc like that, because in Thor.
Oh, bless me.
Bless you.
Go ahead, man.
That's okay. I thought in Thor, it was a little unfortunate that she was supposed to be, she's obviously hanging out with an astrophysicist. She must be smart, but she never really does anything in the whole movie. So at least this time they gave her a chance to shine.
Right. She was the plucky sidekick in the original. And I thought what was very funny was when she walked onto the base and someone just called her by her name and she says, "Doctor." Hey, listen, I'm a doctor. So yeah, that was cool. That was cool as hell.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think it's like an 8-ish. Is it 8 or 9 episodes?
Yeah. I heard it was at least 8. And then something, and I haven't confirmed, but something that I read said that they were going to start increase, because if you notice the episodes were only like a half hour, less than 40 minutes. They're supposed to increase in length as we get closer to the final episode. Okay. So, and right, there's a lot to unlock here. And, everyone that doesn't know is supposed to lead into the next Doctor Strange movie.
I'm sorry. You know what the other thing we didn't mention that I thought was cool?
What's that?
They introduced Sword.
Oh, yes.
That's what
sentient weapons observation and research division.
It's up now. Sword.
Observation and research division, I think it stands for.
So SWORD stands for Sentient World Observation and Response Department.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it will be interesting to see where they end with this, and it will lead into the next phase of the Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, there was a lot of talk, and I know I have a problem. I'm more of a comic purist and follower than anything else. But one of the things with the introduction of Captain Marvel into this universe was that she was the most powerful person, which, on a physicality or whatever, like, right. I mean, she's flying through, Thanos' ship with no problem, and single-handedly brings that down. And I thought what was funny in Endgame when all the woman says she has help, like, what are you all gonna do?
Yeah. Well,
I'll say this: if Scarlet Witch can alter the very fabric of reality.
But let me point this out. Actually, this was actually pointed out by I think it was Kevin Feige, that in all of Endgame, Wanda was gonna kill Thanos.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
If he didn't desperately have his ship fire on his own troops,
dude, that's right. That's my point. Like, this woman has altered the very fabric of reality through her own, hey, I missed the guy that I love, this Synthezoid, which, you know, that'll take me down another topic. But, you know, if she can do that, and in the comics, she can, you know, wipe out all mutants except for a handful. Really? Like, you know, I'm sorry. She's the most powerful.
Well, I don't know. It's interesting to me that, you know, so many of those heroes were created by experimenting with the Infinity Stones, right? Like she and her brother basically in the movies were given their powers by experimenting with the Mind Stone in the staff, right? And they basically turned her into a human reality stone,
right?
By doing it. And then they gave the Vision the Mind Stone. That's like what powered him.
Yep.
And it was so let me see, what else was there?
The Reality Stone, the Power Stone, the Soul Stone.
Oh yes, so it was Captain Marvel, who was powered then by the engine that was created through the experimentation with the Power Stone, right? So like all these, like so she was basically, you know, blasted with power from the Power Stone. All these, you know, there's all these, you know, I don't know. It's interesting to see, you know, and then the biggest human heroes, the Iron Man, Captain America, and the Hulk. None of them were powered by any of the Infinity Stones. It was all basically enhanced humans, either through gadgets or peak physical human training, or just, you know, humans on a cartoonish scale.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, the thing that I had a problem with in the comics, and, you know, I know that comics really back then weren't, there was no like mature comics, no, and I'm talking about maybe in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
I mean, there were, but they were all indie kind of black and white stuff.
Yeah, it was the classic 4-color, you know, good guys are good guys, bad guys are bad guys. But the Vision has always been touted as he was called a Synthezoid, but or android, and he had he was a synthetic being that had, like, you know, what do I want to say? He had, like, you know, human
sentience.
Yeah, like, you know, he had human sentience, but he also was organic. You know, it, like, you know, that's what you know, it was like a almost like a cyborg, some kind of cyborg, where it's like, you know, he wasn't just totally mechanical. He had organic material in him.
It was a really interesting thing, because I thought it was really interesting to see the translation into the movies, because I always thought the Vision was a strange character, because they always drew him like he looked human, but he was able to control this density. So you never really knew, was he metal? Was he flesh? Was he, because you didn't know, because he could control it. It didn't matter. And it was a comic book, so it didn't matter. So like, I thought it was interesting how they were going to translate that. They basically made him look metal.
Right. Well, I with him being a Synthezoid, I never understood why someone wouldn't say, well, you know, since he has organic material on him, like, you know, why couldn't we actually, like, you know, give him like reproductive, you know, capabilities?
Right. Like if he was like grown or something, like somehow like genetically engineered being, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
There was an organic basis to it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Instead,
and
like,
so
no,
like that, it would have eliminated all of this, you know, mental breakdown with the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but in this though, her whole thing was she's having the mental breakdown because he died. And that was the interesting thing in the show, was they showed that quick flash of his corpse, basically, where she's looking at his, and so that makes you wonder, like, is she animating his dead corpse?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Listen, that one scene when she turns around and she sees that big gaping hole in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's kind of what I'm curious. Like, is this supposed to be, you know, so this basically happened. So like, this is what the Scarlet Witch was doing when the people had flashed, right? Yeah. So like during the 5 years, this is kind of what happened.
Yeah.
Because that's like Monica Rambeau comes out of it,
right,
and then goes in,
yeah,
and sees her. So like, this is like, right as everybody's coming. So like as this is happening, the Hulk is snapping.
Yep.
Over, and they're just about to have the huge end game battle. Like it actually makes you wonder, like, so is the end game battle happening at the same time? Because wasn't the Scarlet Witch supposed to be there?
Yeah, well, yeah, she was supposed to. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll say this. You don't know what the time frame is in between that last battle with Thanos and Monica Rambeau showing up.
Coming back.
Right. I mean, maybe it was a week later.
Well, no, he snapped everybody back before that battle.
No. What I'm saying is once they had the snapback and Monica woke up and found out that her mom had passed away, you don't know. I don't think they said in the episode how long it was when she showed back up at S.W.O.R.D. Right. So if they say like, that was a week, a month, or whatever else, I don't think we know exactly.
So this could all be right after Endgame then.
Yes.
This is what Scarlet Witch does after Endgame.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. She left Tony Stark's funeral and, went to Westview and just, had a snap. Bam. A psychotic break.
I mean, it's interesting too, because somebody got the Vision's body back out of Wakanda.
Right. Dude, listen. Really? 5 years, this guy, y'all, like y'all moping around, you don't think somebody was, hey, we got this body here. Like, why don't we just,
this is what gets me. It's Wakanda, right? Highly technically advanced society, super advanced synthezoid created by an alien AI, basically, which that's the other thing. Ultron was also created basically by one of the Infinity Stones. So which means the Vision, because the Vision was created by Ultron, who was created by Infinity Stone. So the Vision was created by and powered by.
Well, but see that whole premise, like, in the comic books, the Vision is more closely associated with like, the computer, like, and the internet. So it's funny to me, that whole Ultron film, they wanted to keep Ultron out of the internet. Why wouldn't the Vision have just said, hey, back me up to the internet?
Oh, for Ultron? Or I mean, for the Vision. Well, that's the whole thing. I honestly think you were right in saying that basically what they probably did when they took him to Wakanda in the first place, the very first thing Shuri probably did was back him up.
That's what I would have thought.
It is such an easy, simple explanation that just it makes so much sense. I can't imagine they wouldn't use it to just have Shuri show up and go, oh yeah, I got a backup of him right here. Here you go.
Right, yeah. Hey, maybe they will. Like I said, I've always liked the Vision and the Scarlet Witch. I really didn't. I don't like the way that they write for him and trying to defeat him. A lot of times, because it is the disassembling and breaking of him, and I think the writing has to step up. Maybe there's a villain that can control density or something, the same effect. Hey, I want to become as hard as a diamond. Nope, you're like a air or whatever, and then I freeze you like that. That to me would be a great way to neutralize the Vision.
Well, I don't know. I'm curious to see what's actually happening, because the Vision's dead, right? All of this is basically happening in Wanda's imagination. She's converted real people to play roles,
exactly,
except for the Vision. The Vision,
well, I mean, it's just
basically his corpse,
right?
It's so that's where it's like, so he's not really back, but he's able to go to work, and they have these storylines where he's not with her,
dude. Yeah,
and he's doing things in her absence, right? So he's existing independently of her.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I'm enjoying it. Like I said, it's got two of my favorite characters or whatever. But I just wonder what's going to happen after her, because if you think about it, you know, they said Chris Evans here recently is going to reprise his role as Captain America, but you know, that could be, you know, something where it's like a flashback or whatever, especially when you take into account what happened at the end of Endgame. You know, Tony Stark or you know, Robert Downey Jr. is dead. His character is dead in the films. You know, this might be Elizabeth Olsen's swan song in the Marvel.
Actually, what I thought was interesting is that apparently Marvel did announce they're going to do Ironheart.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the character Ironheart.
Yes, I am. Yes.
So what's interesting about that is it's a girl who makes her own set of armor. And so Tony Stark kind of takes her under his wing. Right. But what's interesting is that he provides her with an AI for her suit. He has Jarvis.
Right.
Then he has the whatever her name is, Karen or whatever he calls it.
Friday, wasn't it?
Friday. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
He gives her one of him. So it's Tony Stark is the AI in her suit, which brings back the possibility of Robert Downey Jr. reprising his role in an AI form.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you just do some voice acting and get paid lots of money for it.
Yeah, he could come back and do what Paul Bettany was doing, you know?
Yeah.
Voice the computer.
Yeah, that would be cool, man. But yeah, I really do want to see where they're going to go with this, but I do believe that this is going to be Elizabeth Olsen's swan song in the MCU.
Oh, really?
I that's what I think.
Well,
I mean, think about it, dude. If someone can alter reality to that effect, and then, like you said, she's co-opted these innocent people, this whole entire town, you know, and I don't think she's doing this consciously. I think it's all subconscious. But,
yeah, I do too.
You know,
do you remember what happened to her? I think, and I could be wrong about this. I'd have to look it up. If I'm wrong, if I remember this right, after that whole House of M thing, where she, you know, wipes out mutants at the end of it, isn't it? She doesn't die. She actually goes and Dr. Doom harbors her, doesn't he? In Latveria, if it was go like stay with him.
You know what? I can't remember. I thought she stayed on that
Wundagore Mountain.
No, I thought she stayed on that mutant refuge. The island.
Oh, Genosha or whatever.
Was it Genosha or it might have been Genosha?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought she stayed there.
Okay. I know there was a time where she basically went and sought refuge with Dr. Doom and stayed with him. And I think that's an interesting way to bring Dr. Doom and the Fantastic Four into it is through. But at the same time, then you've got the Dr. Doom love triangle thing with with Sue Richards, but
right.
Depending on how they decide to do it.
Well, we'll see, man. I really would think that, you know, the authorities, you know, like that's dangerous, man. What do you do with somebody that could do that? Because she could do it again on maybe even on a bigger scale.
Yeah, but what do you do with her?
Right.
I mean, what are they going to do? Like kill her? That's pretty dark.
Yeah, it does. So I'm looking at answer, and it does say that she was hiding with Dr. Doom the whole time, although that wasn't revealed until much later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So, and I do remember that there was with the Young Avengers, her two children.
I thought Wiccan was one of her. Ended up being like one of her two children.
Wiccan and Speed
are both of the children.
Yeah.
Okay. So they do still exist.
Yeah, they still exist. I'm saying when they originally wrote it,
right.
The kids, the souls of the kids were merged back with the demon, and then, you know, this must have been, I want to say this was like maybe 10 years later with the Young Avengers or whatever. Okay. And I don't know the exact, way that they did it, but they retconned it, where now these kids have basically been in existence and grown up.
Okay, that's what, because I honestly thought I had missed something, because I kind of remember that too. Like I remember like they were fake, like they were figments of her imagination, and then all of a sudden Young Avengers, because I wasn't really reading, and it's like those kids are her kids. What? I missed something.
Yeah, and hey, that's what they've done in comic books for the entirety of their history. Oh yeah. Like, someone writes a story, and then 20 years later, someone comes on and says, "Oh, well, that was like, an alternate reality or dimension, or it
was a dream."
Right. Yeah.
That's not a trope.
Right.
Oh, the whole show was a dream, right, Bob Newhart?
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, man. I mean, I hope that the Scarlet Witch isn't gone for good, or the Vision, but who knows? Yeah.
I don't know. It's it's going to be interesting to see. We'll have to do another. We'll maybe the show will morph into the WandaVision review.
Hey, so on another topic. What do you think, man, about these representatives? Representative Green, and what's the other one? Boebert. Oh my goodness! I have a problem. Listen, I know you have your own agenda, but from what, especially with Boebert, it's a stunt. I mean, like the entire. Oh, I got my gun. Like she had a video that she released where she's, supposedly locking, a magazine or clip in place. Right. And, then she puts the, weapon on her person. And then she walks to the House of Representatives.
Oh, geez.
But the magazine was empty. But, so it's exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're sitting up here talking about, I, use a weapon to protect me and my family, which your family wasn't there,
And it's an empty weapon.
And right, it's an empty weapon. So because I think she knows that, hey, that would be a felony in Washington, D.C. Yeah. So yeah. I think that I'm gonna sit up here and I'm gonna portray myself as being a Second Amendment, defender or whatever. But no, you're following the law, to a point. Right. But my whole thing is don't use the House of Representatives as a publicity stunt like this. If you want to change the law,
dude. I mean, look, it's the whole Republican Party, right? And it's just my opinion. But ever since they elected Reagan, right, and they put an actor in charge, they've been all about like just politics as theater, right? Like the whole abortion issue, right? It's all theater. The Republicans will never do anything to get rid of abortion because they will never do anything to get rid of their one issue voters. They have all these people captured that are captive voters who think that they're voting for the Republican Party because they're anti-abortion, because they've been told for 50 years that the Republicans are going to somehow outlaw it, but they never do. They've never done, and they had the White House, both houses of Congress, and the Supreme Court, and they didn't do it.
Right. Well, listen, I've always said the way that you get rid of it is to change people's hearts and minds. I mean, it doesn't matter what the law says. The law can create a situation where you can punish people if you break that law, but the law doesn't dictate morality so much.
No, but the thing is that of all the people that I know who've ever had to have an abortion, it's always been some kind of medical crisis that makes it like a necessity. And they always portray it as like women are out there using it as contraceptives. And I'm not saying that never happens, but I've never seen it happen. And of the people that I have seen happen, it's always been a very serious, life-threatening issue, right? And it's always like one of those things where it's never entered into lightly. And it's always one of those things that's so serious. To me, it's a decision between the woman, her doctor, and God. You know,
I feel
that's why I believe it's their choice. I don't think that I have a place saying that, because in my place, the only thing changing the law would do is, because it's not going to end abortion, it would just end safe abortions.
Well, right, and that's my thought on it as well.
And I like to see it reduced, which is the whole thing.
But that's the thing. It has. If you look at the numbers of abortions over the last 15, 20 years, they've steadily gone down.
Right.
That's the thing. Now, births, period, have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
But again, what you need to do is you need to change the hearts and mind of people. You don't do it through a law. I mean, I can sit up here and make all kinds of laws. I mean, they had miscegenation laws or whatever, and people were still, fornicating and secretly getting married or whatever.
Well, I mean, even within our lifetimes, look at China. They tried to enforce a law limiting people to one child, and all it did was create an adoption industry in other countries.
Well, not only that, but it also created a imbalance of men versus women. So you got all these men over there like, hey, I want a woman.
Right. Well, I mean, but all the families were like, well, we can only have one child, so I want a boy.
Right.
So like all the women were being like adopted because they wanted, if they were only allowed one child, they wanted their one child to be a boy.
Right.
Which it's it's a whole other
right. But I just I agree with you. It is a stunt, and I don't want to get in between somebody. If you do that, you got to answer the guy. That's something that you got to answer to.
But to me, the whole thing is that they're all about theater, right? And that's what those two new representatives represent a trend that you and I have talked about before in both radicalization, that they've been radicalized. They've been fed a stream of information that's been continually isolated them factually and socially. And now they're doing theater. They're doing performance theater where Marjorie, whatever her face is chasing the Parkland students around on video.
Oh, dude, that's terrible. Listen, you don't have to agree with the kid or whatever, but don't sit up here and act like this kid doesn't have a reason for the agenda that he has before him.
Chasing him around and screaming at him I mean, it didn't even she thought she was looking like she was gonna, it's one of those things where you talk about owning the libs, right? Like all the things they do where they think they're owning the libs somehow.
Right.
They only make 99% of the time, they just embarrass themselves when they do that.
Right.
And that's one of those cases. She was herself.
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Lorena Boebert, whatever her name is, just trying to get through, like bringing an empty gun to Congress. The whole thing she's doing. This is what kills me. She just got her, I saw this recently. She was a high school dropout and she got a GED. But apparently she got her GED just a few weeks before the election.
Oh, okay.
So not having a high school diploma was never really a barrier for her to run for Congress.
No, I don't think that it's a requirement. I mean, it would be nice
it's not constitutionally a requirement.
Right.
That's the whole thing.
It would be nice to have, hey.
It's one of those things that I guess I've always been personally mistaken, thinking like I was underqualified.
No, listen. Who we just had as president, the former president, number 45, has proven it doesn't matter your intellect. It doesn't matter, anything other than if people want you to be there.
Right.
And so, I'm not surprised that this woman, just got her GED or whatever. And, I'm not going to denigrate her. I don't know her like that, but I'll say this, it's a difference from being elitist and being elite. And so, I can want someone who knows what they're talking about, who, is an expert. I guarantee you this. I just had surgery on my thumb. You think I want to go in there and, I got one guy who's sitting up there talking about, I'm going to operate. He's sucking on his fingers, eating Cheetos or whatever. And then, he just goes into the operating room without even washing, like scrubbing and everything. Someone like that, or someone who can speak intelligently, who can, sounds like they know what they're doing.
Like you said, the last president versus Joe Biden, and it's not even a left versus right thing, right? Because it's not conservative to not believe in science. It's not conservative to be this performance art politics,
right?
Like, it is a unique thing that these guys have relied so heavily now on this, and that's what I find interesting. It's like the difference between the belief in expertise, and that you should have people who know what they're doing those jobs,
right?
Or the idea that you should have people who are just the loudest person with a megaphone. That's why the whole Republican Party has turned into like a bunch of Rush Limbaugh and what's his name, Alex Jones, Sean Hannity, a bunch of screaming. That's why you get these people like Lorena Bobbitt. And my point to say wasn't to denigrate saying that she's, but she just got a GED.
Well, right. I mean, how old is she?
Expertise isn't there, right? Her only expertise is running a bar and having a gun, and that's her whole thing. She only got famous for basically.
How old is she? Matter of fact, let me look it up now. I mean, that's the thing that you gotta as someone who's electing an official. You're electing someone who just got a GED. I'm not saying that you got
the Republicans. Do you remember a couple of years ago when the Republicans voted in Donald Trump in 2016? There was a woman in Macomb County that got voted in because of straight ticket voting named Karen Spranger.
Yeah,
she was the Macomb County clerk that got voted in. She was a complete nut job, but she was performance art.
This Representative Boebert is 34 years old. So, 34 and you just got your GED. Like, my entire thing is, if that's true, why, like, you have 4 children, like, how are you going to talk to, your children about the importance of education? And you don't even, you just got your GED. Like, why wouldn't you say, hey, I'm going to do this or whatever to prove to my children that, hey, I want you to at least have a high school diploma.
Right.
You just did it at 34. Like, obviously it wasn't important to you from, I don't know, 17, 18 to, 30 something.
She's a business owner, right? And that's the idea among Republicans, right? Is that small business owners are somehow analogous to large corporations. So actually we are a little over, I think, on our time, and it's starting to get dark out and I'm losing my light.
It is. It's theater. I really, communities are able to elect whom they choose to represent them. But do you really want someone representing you who, it's all about theater rather than
right.
Getting something done? And I'm so sick of, and this goes for Democrats as well. I'm so sick and tired of the partisanship. I just want people to be able to say, hey, yes, I have my agenda, this is mine. And we're not so partisan that, hey, we have a shared belief. Let's work on that or whatever to try to get it done.
Yeah.
It can't be about, hey, I'm Republican and you're Democrat and I don't care what, you're talking about. I'm not going to help you.
But
you're supposed to be.
The problem is, I understand what you're saying. It shouldn't be that way. The problem I have with what's going on right now, though, is that, so for instance, the filibuster in the Senate, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Democrats are talking now about like, oh, well, we're going to come to a deal with them where we're going to keep it, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, the Democrats are setting themselves up to absolutely lose in the midterms.
Oh, yeah.
Because
absolutely.
if they don't play hard, but the whole filibuster was not in the Constitution. It's a gentleman's agreement between the two parties to honor their minority. And the Republicans blew that up and straight up said they're not going to honor it. When they're in power, they're not going to honor it. So if the Democrats continue to honor that and give the other minority more power than they will give them, that's, of course, they're going to lose because that's weakness. That's stupid. That's suicidal.
Right.
You don't do that when someone's, it's literally giving into an abuser.
Well, listen, we talked about this. Why would you do, Republicans had just in the last session done this where, hey, they just needed 50 votes to pass all of this or whatever.
Right.
I don't understand why you would turn around.
Constitutionally requires 51 votes, a simple majority in the Senate to pass legislation.
Right.
That whole filibuster and requiring 60 votes is not it's not in the Constitution.
Right. But of course, they'll sit up here and say like, hey, I'm a constitutionalist.
Right.
I'm an originalist.
Oh, I'm an originalist. Right.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. All right, man.
All right, man. This is great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
Absolutely.
you feel better.
Yeah, thanks, man. You know, for everybody, you know, that didn't know I was in a bad car accident. You know, and thankfully it wasn't worse. I just came out with a bruised head and a broken thumb. So
yeah, fortunately you only hit your head.
Yeah. I got some sense knocked into me.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. It was good talking, brother.
Yes, sir. You take care.
We'll talk again next weekend.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
And this is Intellicide signing off.
All right. Goodbye.